Elena Carter stepped through the grand entrance of Silverwood Grill, a place where the chandeliers sparkled like stars and the scent of truffle butter and aged whiskey lingered in the air. She walked with quiet grace, her heels tapping against the marble floor, her emerald green dress hugging her curves with understated elegance. People turned to look. They always did. Elena had carved her success from the ground up. Founder of a top financial consulting firm, owner of a penthouse overlooking the city, and the kind of woman who didn't ask for a seat at the table. She simply took it. Tonight, she had a reservation at one of the most exclusive restaurants in town. Or so she thought. As she approached the front desk, her eyes landed on the man standing beside the hostess. He was in his late 50s, with neatly combed silver hair and a stiff posture that screamed authority. A name tag on his lapel read Gregory Westcott, general manager. His expression barely shifted as she stopped in front of him, though there was a flicker of something she recognized all too well. "Disdain, can I help you?" His voice was polite, but it carried an edge, like a blade wrapped in silk. Elena's gaze flicked to the hostess, a young woman who suddenly found the reservation book very interesting. "Yes, I have a reservation under Carter. 8 o'clock. Gregory didn't bother checking the system. He simply crossed his arms and let out a slow breath. "I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight." Elena's lips parted slightly. "That's strange. I made my reservation last week. I even received a confirmation this afternoon." "Must have been a clerical error," he replied smoothly, still making no move to verify. Elena tilted her head slightly, her eyes scanning the dining room. Crystal glasses glistened on white tablecloths. Laughter hummed through the air, and servers bustled between tables balancing plates of filet mignon and scallops. And yet, in the far corner, a freshly reset table sat untouched. She motioned toward it. "That one seems open." Gregory's smile was tight. "That one's reserved." "So, you are taking reservations." His jaw flexed. The hostess shifted uncomfortably. Elena had seen this dance before. The subtle ways power played favorites, the careful maneuvering to keep people like her out without ever saying the quiet part out loud. But she wasn't leaving. "Perhaps I should speak to the owner," she suggested, her voice smooth. Gregory's smirk deepened. "I handle all guest concerns." "I'm sure you do," she said, matching his tone. "But I'd still like to speak with them." His patience thinned. "Ms. Carter, we reserve the right to refuse service." Ah, there it was. Elena exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of her phone inside her clutch. A quick search would reveal restaurant policies, customer complaints, even the owner's direct contact. But she didn't need to pull out receipts yet, because at that moment, a waiter appeared, clearly flustered but determined. "Ms. Carter, your table is ready. Right this way." Gregory's entire frame stiffened. He glanced at the waiter, as though the younger man had just committed an unforgivable sin. Elena held his gaze for a beat longer, then smiled, just a flicker of amusement. "Not today," she murmured, turning to follow the waiter toward the open table. As she settled into her seat, she felt the shift in the room. Conversations dipped into hushed whispers. A woman in pearls glanced toward her husband, her lips moving too quickly for polite conversation. A couple at the bar exchanged uneasy looks, their gazes darting between Elena and Gregory. She smoothed her napkin over her lap, unbothered. She had learned a long time ago that places like this weren't just about food. They were about belonging. And when people like Gregory held the keys, they decided who got through the door and who didn't. A waiter named Lucas approached, his voice just above a whisper. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" Elena glanced at the wine menu, then at him. "What do you recommend?" she asked, her tone light, easing the tension. He hesitated. "The Bordeaux is excellent. Smooth, not too heavy." "Perfect. I'll have a glass." Lucas nodded, stealing a glance toward the manager before hurrying away. Elena felt it before she even turned her head. Someone was standing too close. "Excuse me," came Gregory's voice, smoother now, like a man trying to reclaim control of a slipping situation. "May I have a word?" Elena picked up her water glass, took a slow sip, then looked up. "I'm in the middle of dinner." Gregory leaned in slightly. "I just want to ensure that all our guests have a comfortable experience. Our clientele expects a certain atmosphere. She raised a brow. Yes, and I wouldn't want you to feel out of place. Out of place. She set her glass down deliberately. Because I'm dining here? Or because you don't want me here? His lips pressed into a thin line. That's not what I'm saying. No, she mused, fingers tracing the stem of her glass. But it sounds a lot like you're trying to say it without actually saying it. The space between them grew taut, like a rope stretched too tight. Gregory exhaled sharply. I think it would be best if... I think, Elena interrupted, her voice steady, that you should be very careful about what you say next. His nostrils flared slightly. Before he could respond, Lucas reappeared, carefully setting a glass of deep red Bordeaux in front of her. Your wine, ma'am. Elena picked up the glass, swirled it lightly, and took a measured sip. Her gaze never left Gregory's. Delicious, she murmured, setting it down. Now, unless you have something else to say, I'd like to enjoy my meal. A long pause. Then, without another word, Gregory turned and walked away. Lucas exhaled a breath he'd clearly been holding. I'm sorry about that. Elena shook her head. Don't apologize for him, she said calmly. Just tell me what's good on the menu. Lucas hesitated, then smiled, a real one, relieved. He started listing the specials, his voice lighter now. Around the restaurant, conversations resumed, but not without stolen glances in Elena's direction. A few looked away quickly, pretending they hadn't witnessed the exchange. Others, the woman in pearls, the suited man at the bar, still stared, their discomfort evident. Elena let them watch. She had made herself undeniable. And tonight, she wasn't just going to have dinner. She was going to savor every single bite. As Elena savored each bite of her expertly prepared meal, the tension in the air gradually softened. The other diners, who had once been transfixed by the unfolding drama, now struggled with their own thoughts. Some avoided her gaze entirely, their discomfort simmering beneath the surface. Others stole quick, uncertain glances, as if reconsidering what they had just witnessed. The truth was simple, yet undeniable. Elena had not raised her voice, had not caused a scene, had not done anything except insist on receiving the same treatment as everyone else. And yet, that had been enough to rattle the very foundation of this place. Gregory Westcott had wanted her gone, but he hadn't just lost that battle. He had exposed himself in the process. And now, an entire room of people had seen what exclusion looked like when stripped of its usual disguises. Lucas returned to check on her, more confident this time, the unease in his posture replaced with something close to admiration. How's everything? He asked. Elena took another sip of her wine, letting the rich flavors settle on her tongue before responding. Perfect, she said with a knowing smile. Because this wasn't just about dinner. It was about belonging, about standing firm in spaces designed to make her feel small and refusing to shrink. As she finished her meal, a quiet satisfaction settled within her. She hadn't just claimed a table tonight. She had claimed her place. And as she stood to leave, heels clicking against the polished floor, she knew that the next time a woman like her walked through those doors, the room would remember this night. Because silence was no longer an option, and neither was pretending not to see.